and we came out like gangbusters. We headlined right from day one, and the show got bigger and bigger until we made it to arena level. And then we had an indie deal finally at the tail end when we really needed it. But then we had a tragedy with the head of the label and also our manager. There was a bad accident after the Stone Pony gig, and they wound up losing their lives. And that created a problem with the finances and $500,000 left on the table. So the record never came out. So that was basically the stopping point for Fury. We couldn't go any further because in this industry, you need money to continue.
Sure.
To break a band, years ago, a lot of people don't know this, but when you would take a band and break them on the radio and also on MTV, there's money involved in that. And everyone gets a piece. You know what I mean? So to break a band, back then you needed $1 million to do it, and we went as far as we could. And then that tragedy set us into a spiral of waiting and legal things. And it was basically the death nail for Fury, sadly. But we had this crazy fan base over the years trading the magazines and the cassette tapes and the old demos. And it was brewing in Japan and Germany and Colombia, Mexico. And this label reached out to me. They were looking for me for a few years. And then it was a friend of mine, Al Natelli, that hooked me up with the label last October. And then we were in negotiations, and we finally were able to put this bit of history out. So we're really happy.
Absolutely, for sure. When it came to putting out this music, considering it's what would have been NYfury's, debut album before, tragedy struck, what was it about the music now as opposed to back then? Did you feel that there were any changes you needed to make? Were there any changes that you did make?
Well, actually, the album that's out now would be considered the first part of the first two records that we had in the can.
Or the two records.
So we had about 4 albums worth of material, and it varied from real heavy stuff to the more commercial, radio-friendly metal. So this first record, you get a little taste of everything. You know what I mean? So, but in terms of back then, I wanted to go really heavy at a certain point, and we were working with certain people in the industry, and they wanted us at the point of to do more radio-friendly power ballads and things like that, which I didn't mind doing, but we really wanted to go a little bit heavier. Our roots were basically, people always ask what was the influences of NYfury, and I tell them, well, visually, obviously the visuals were a very important factor, right? So we all grew up liking Kiss, the original Kiss, and Angel, and Van Halen, and bands like that, which were show bands. But musically, we were really influenced, me personally, like Randy Rhoads, Iron Maiden, Judas Priest, a lot of the English metal. And we're kind of like a mesh of all that stuff, you know what I mean? Like the American rock and arena rock and the English rock, you know what I mean? So we don't sound like a Poison or any of the bands like that from that era. We're kind of a little bit, we're kind of different, I think, even today. And that's what's happening now. Our stuff is getting on the radio. And people are hearing it now, and they're comparing it to Van Halen and Iron Maiden, and they don't know what to make of it, and it's kind of cool, So musically wise, sound wise, it's hard to kind of pinpoint.
Sure.
But we were, the gimmick that we wanted to do was the biggest, best show possible, and a hard driving theatrical show with hard driving music, and I think that's what we didn't want to change the world politically or get too deep. We were there to have fun and give people a great show with high energy music.
Absolutely, 100%. And have you felt that the music, considering you've had this music ready to go for so long, do you feel that is held up? Because music, the times change and people's ears change. And how do you feel that the music has held up to this release?
Well, that's the interesting thing. We almost didn't realize we kind of didn't know if it would be timeless or hold up. So what happened was we started releasing some videos on YouTube, and the pre-orders are doing amazing, and the radio's playing it. So people are embracing it as a new release, which it is. It's a new release in 2022, but we're a classic band. So it is holding up. I mean, when people hear it on the radio, they're hearing it. The other night, I was driving in my car, and we were on the radio with Queen and Kiss and Iron Maiden in the same block. and it sounded, it worked. Then we would play with more modern bands another time on the radio, and it worked. So I think it kind of, crosses over. The look obviously is, the 80s theatrical heavy metal look. I mean, if you look at Motley Crue in the 80s, or even Queensryche, they had different clothing, and it was, the MTV presence, you had to look a certain way. But musically, it's holding up today. I think it holds up great. I'll put those demos up against any of those, platinum selling records that were millions of dollars behind. When you heard those bands, they had the top producers and the big money behind them, and MTV, and we didn't have any of that. But I think it holds up, and it's selling. The pre-orders are doing great, and we're getting picked up in Japan and Germany by all these stores, and they're doing large orders. So we're pretty happy, and it hasn't even come out yet, and we're already into a larger pressing already.
Dude, that's
and
awesome.
We're on Eonian Records too, if you didn't know.
Yeah, Ammonium for sure.
Yeah, Eonian. Yeah, they're a great label, and they specialize in a different niche, of the that 80s classic type of rock and roll that that people like, that genre. And look, it's bigger than it's ever been right now. I mean, look, Crew and Poison playing stadiums, and Kiss is still playing stadiums, and Iron Maiden. So there's Guns N' Roses. I mean, all those bands are still doing really well compared to a lot of the bands that are played on regular pop radio. So I don't think the heavy metal thing has gone away. I think it's just been hidden, but the people still love it.
Absolutely. And one more thing to cover before I kick it up to Angel. Since we're talking about labels, like when it came to like shopping around the record or looking for the label that worked like best for you, there's also other labels like, like Devil Doll and Frontiers and stuff that have also seemed to really be cutting their teeth in that kind of 80s rock genre as like their kind of dominant thing. Were those some of the labels that you looked into, or did Ammonium just kind of come to you and they were speaking the right language and kind of sharing your vision? Like, how exactly did it work for you shopping around the record to make it that it was beneficial for you?
Well, I got to be honest. I actually did. I wasn't even thinking about NYfury at all. I was in another band, Carnival of Souls, and I was doing that for a while, and that was more like a Metallica, Disturbed type of band with the show. And I played with guys like Stet Howland from Wasp, and he's also in Metal Church. And Bobby Rock was on drums too for a period from Vinnie Vincent Invasion. And I had a bunch of new guys with me, and Dee, my wife, was in the band, and we were playing and touring. And I was doing that, a whole totally different thing. The label actually was looking for me. I didn't realize it, and finally they found me. And then when they wanted to release it, I was kind of like, "Wow, you really want to release this?" And they go, "Yeah, this band has been talked about for years in the circuit or in the genre, the underground movement, and we really like to release the NYfury album." So I said, wow, we're gonna have to dig up these old tapes, fix them the best we can, and try to give the best product possible. Now, lucky for us, Fury, I didn't save everything, but I saved enough, the photo sessions and the videos and the material. So we have enough to do about 3 or 4 records. And we were lucky enough to have guys like Danny Sanchez do the album cover for us, who did Night Songs by Cinderella with Mark Weiss. He was the guy that set up those famous album covers like Crazy Nights, him and Mark Weiss. So he took our photos back in the day, and I think that added to the appeal of the release. So Eonian, they felt that it would be a good release, and I just went with it. But I didn't intend for it to snowball like this, especially with radio. Like in Florida, there's a station called 107 WBRR, the Gator. They happened to put us on the radio, and then it went into rotation right away. And they said that we're blowing up the request lines, and people. We have 3 songs in rotation, which is unheard of for a metal band from that genre, being played now. You know what I mean? And we're pretty happy. But the requests keep coming in, and we entered in at number 24 in the second week, and we went up this week up to 19. And people are loving the stuff. I think they're thinking it's fresh and new, and I think it is, because so many of the bands, a lot of bands sound the same today. So when you're hearing someone like Fury, we're kind of standing out now in a weird way.
Absolutely, for sure. I actually did see a post that you that you put up, I believe either today or at least just recently, where you were talking about, getting to meet Ace Frehley and then having your song played like right after his.
Oh, Ace, yeah, he's a hero of mine. I knew him since 1980. I was a little kid, and I was one of the biggest Kiss fans, and I got to become friends with Eric Carr and the rest of the band. And I used to go up to Orcoin Management, and I would, I was a fan like Steve. We're big fans, and they would allow me to come up there. And this is back when they were wearing the makeup and no one knew who they were. And they would allow me to watch in their conference room these Betamax tapes of them in concert. And I would talk to Bill Aucoin and the band, and I actually have a whole photo album of that era when I was a Kiss fan and really into them. And so I became friends with Ace. And then in the 80s, when he started his own band, I became friends with Richie Scarlett. And one night they asked me to play with them at the Cat Club. And this is right when Fury was about to break. And sadly, it was a band that was playing, and Ace and Richie were guests in the club with me. We were there, and they asked me to come up on stage and play. And they wanted to do Rip It Out and Cold Gin. And I happened to know the songs on bass. And we went up there, and the bass player wouldn't give me the bass. The rest of the band gave the guitars to Ace and Richie, but the bass player was kind of a dick, and he wouldn't give me the bass.
Oh, no.
And at the time, I had my good friend Al Munson, who was a top rock photographer like Frank White and Brian Rademacher, those top guys that take great photos. And he had his cameras and everything with him. And he was a big Kiss fan too. My younger brother was there too. We were hoping like, wow, this is your chance to play with your hero. And the guy wouldn't give me the bass on stage. It was kind of a little bit of a scene. So I just, left. I mean, if someone came on my stage and they wanted to play, whoever it would be, I would go, here, take my bass, go ahead,
Yeah.
But over the years, I got to work with Ace. I used to do conventions. I used to run these big rock and roll conventions at the Meadowlands Convention Center. And I would have Ace Frehley, Peter Criss, and all these famous rock stars and movie stars and wrestlers all mixed together, almost like what Comic-Con is now. And Ace and Peter, D. Snyder, all those guys would do my shows. So I knew Ace over the years. So it is kind of funny that Ace, every time last week, I've been hearing my songs played right alongside Ace or Kiss. It's pretty humble. It's really beautiful. I think it's great. It's a childhood dream, I guess you'd call it,
Absolutely. That's super duper rad. Angel, let's kick it up to you, buddy. Anything currently from any fans, but also anything, of course, from yourself?
Of course, there always is. Definitely, I'm going to kick things off with 2 questions from Brian. No worries. They're very normal questions. And this one is good. Should record labels focus on the genre for peak distribution, or should they host a broader spectrum of music?
Should the labels, I'm not understanding, in terms of distributing something like Fury?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, with right now, what they're doing is they have like a fan base core of the label that already is into what this niche is, but now they're also going into stores, and especially like in Germany and Japan and places like that, heavy metal's still the same, and it's really loved. You know what I mean? And it's coming back here too. So digital, there's the digital aspect of it. You know what I mean? So we're going to be on all platforms, and we have limited edition vinyl, and then the CD will be available everywhere. You know what I mean? So stores, in terms of like the distribution, I mean, it's not going to be the same as it was right back in the day when you had all these mall chains and things like that. So it's kind of like you got to weed out and find the areas and ways of moving a record like this. You know what I mean? So internet definitely helps, because I haven't been on like things like Facebook in a long time, or YouTube pushing anything, but I noticed that just us doing it, our numbers are jumping up in the thousands, like in certain places, and we're getting the hits, and people are discovering it. Some of them, half of them are new fans, and half are old fans. But I'm excited for both. But the new fans are real exciting because they never got to see Fury, and they're watching videos of us in arenas and stuff, and they're ordering the CD, and we're being asked to play now and tour. So we're probably going to be doing some selected cities and have a stage show and try to bring back what we did back then, but in a new way, a new twist.
Nice.
And another question from Brian. There's an edge to the New York City, New Jersey hair metal scene. What do you think is the primary factor for that?
Why it was such a big, why was it big in that area?
Yeah.
I think it was big everywhere. like we get asked all the time, oh, how come you guys didn't go to California, at the time in that era? If you're talking about the past or present.
Probably the past, yeah.
Yeah, so the
Probably
past, I mean,
didn't really
the
specify.
80s era, there'll never be another era like that, I don't think, because of the exposure and the MTV and all that stuff, what I mean, the bands had. But, now there's a new generation of people that are discovering these older classic bands, and they're loving, like Iron Maiden plays places like India. Who would figure that, right? So I think it has a chance of becoming big again, the way it did in the past, But like I think for the Jersey, New York area, it was a very big thing. You had bands like Twisted Sister that were just dominant in the clubs, and there was a scene here as well as California. It was different. The California scene was a little bit easier. I think they would play the Strip, and if you had a blonde frontman, you had a record deal, that kind of thing. So people, we tried to stay in the tri-state area because we knew that it was already oversaturated over there in California, so we were in New York, New Jersey, tri-state area band, but we went elsewhere. We went, Philadelphia and Puerto Rico and places like that. So, we really wanted to tour the whole world, but the scene was very big in the New York area. I don't know why it was so big. I mean, I loved it. I loved that whole genre of music. I loved the videos. I loved the era. It was a fun era. Seeing bands every night, Motley Crue one night, Judas Priest the next. It was great. So I think the exposure for TV really helped get into the homes, and that's what made it big.
Yeah.
I think that's
a really good point because Motley Crue. Sorry.
You go ahead, Motley Crue.
Can you hear me?
Sorry. Yeah.
No, sorry. Motley Crue. They got a blonde hair guy. Skid Row, blonde hair. Van Halen. So that's like a really good point.
Well, that was just you had to have variety back then, right? So you had all the Warrants, and great bands like Warrant. I love Warrant. Jay Lane was a nice guy. I met him a few times. Really nice guy. That was you had to have the appeal. I think the big thing that happened in heavy metal was girls entered the marketplace. So when females entered, they were buying a lot of records and buying a lot of tickets. So those lead singers, like we just mentioned, the good-looking frontmen, of the time, they appealed to that female audience, right? So you had guys liking it and females, and I think and I think that was one of the things that were caught on back then was the image of all these bands. So we were aware of that, but our influences didn't come from the '80s bands. We were more influenced by Angel and Kiss in terms of visual. You know what I mean? So and playing wise, we liked everything from Zeppelin, Sabbath up.
So with touring and everything that is happening in places like Japan and overseas, could we see the band going to tour overseas to some of those places?
I learned to say never, especially with this release. I never expected it to be so well received so early on without even being released yet. It comes out December 30th. But, I could say if the right promoter asks us to come over to Japan or Germany, I think we would do it. I'm not sure if all the original members would be able to do it, but, I would be, most of us would do it, We would want to, do it. If we get the right offers, we'll do it. We were offered already to play certain theaters, so we're in negotiation with that, and also having a new stage show built. I don't know if you guys have seen the band on video and YouTube. There's some arena footage of us playing. You can see the show. If we take it, it'll go to the next level. It'll be more modernized, obviously, and I think we'll have fun with it. Because we always like putting on a show. I think that's the key thing. NYfury was big. It was like the city, big and over the top, and that's what we liked. Yeah, so we would definitely like to take it. We would definitely love to take it on the road or go to Europe and stuff and do a couple shows here and there. That would be great.
And just to kind of put this out there, because no matter what website you go to, when a band puts up tour dates, everybody is going to say, "Why don't you come to my hometown. Why don't you come to Montana? Why don't you come to this place? So what can the fans do? Can the fans have an influence on promoters to kind of reach out to their local promoters and say, hey, we really want to bring this band to our town?
Yeah, I think, for us, it'll probably work. We've been getting people from Kansas, North Carolina, Ohio, asking us to play. You know what I mean? So, but us going forward, we definitely would do something. Now there's stuff in the works for Philadelphia, New Jersey, New York, as of now, and Florida. So those are like 4 cities that we're in negotiations with to put something on. But if fans in other parts want us to play, and there's a demand, if the record happens to sell, or more stations pick it up, like what's happening now, you never know what could happen. A station in Detroit could start playing us, and then a promoter might want to book us with a couple of the cool bands, and we could do some shows. So we're open to all that, and it's guys like you that are out there talking to the fans and interviewing the bands. Maybe we could put together a nice package with another band from that era. We were in negotiations for that too as well. We'll see what happens. I mean, in the past, we played with a lot of great bands like Skid Row and Kicks and all those bands. Maybe in the future we could do a show with one of those guys, as well as playing, on our own. I guess the right promoter and the fans getting behind someone in a town like that, if enough requests happen, we'll do it.
Right. So to the fans, call, email the promoters and also the people at the radio station as well to go ahead and play the music. Because let's face it, radio stations, they seem to play the same damn 5 songs every hour.
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of the sad thing about it, because there's a lot of great bands out there, but they don't get the exposure that these bands of today. I mean, the labels and the radio, mainstream radio, they don't really have the right pulse, I think, on a lot of stuff that's going on. There's a lot of bands out there from all over the U.S. that are trying to break big, but the radio will push beats and this crap pop music and stuff and the hip hop, but people want rock and roll. They want loud guitars. I mean, just look at Metallica. They're playing stadiums still. Look at Motley Crue and Poison and Def Leppard and Kiss. And I mean, the list goes on. If these stadiums are selling out, then people would like to get more of that music, I think. But the radio and the labels, they're not on board with it, And the sad thing is the 80s scene too. A lot of, I always get asked this question, was it grunge that killed the 80s music? And it was part of it. But to be honest, when Warren had Cherry Pie out, right?
Yeah,
I think it was gold and climbing. It was doing great. You know what I mean? And then they had the next album. I think it obviously went platinum, but the next album with Machine Gun, I think it was that the same album? It was an album that they had out and it hit gold, but then they were already ushering those guys out. I think Jamie Lane said it on VH1 once. The label just stopped pushing them, and they had a new agenda to push grunge. So
I think that was the Dog Eat Dog record, which is fucking great.
It's a killer album.
Yeah,
I remember my friend got it. He came over and he said, "Check this album out." And I like Warren. I think they're a great band, and Janie Lane definitely was the key factor in that band. But the songs are really good. But if the radio don't play it, and the TV doesn't play it, it's not going to go anywhere. Yeah. So for someone like NYfury now, it's going to be internet that's going to help sell this record, and radio like 107, the Gator out of Florida, stations like that, and then there's other ones playing us in Greece and other markets they're playing us. I think we'll hit a certain marketplace, but if we had what say Katy Perry has, can you imagine a heavy metal band with a show being played all the time on TV and radio and halftime at the football game? Yeah. It would be huge. But you're not going to get that kind of exposure unless someone really brave in the industry says, let's start pushing these type of bands again. So, they dictate what people get, and America, sadly, Europe is a lot better, in Japan and places like that. They're still loyal to metal. Yeah. They have all these festivals and they love American bands, old and new. Here, America, sadly, is the flavor of the week. So if you look at the 80s genre and the 70s, that was all arena rock, and metal was huge. And then you get into that period of the grunge era, and then what happened? Grunge ran its course, and then hip-hop and rap got pushed. Mm-hmm. And if you see it, it's all done by a certain machine that dictates. You know what I mean? So It's an interesting industry, when you look at it. Us, we're just gonna have fun with this. We're not gonna think too deep in it, and hopefully we could reach people. My goal was originally for the album to be in the hands of someone in Sweden or Germany or England, and they could finally hear NYfury, and then they could play it to their friends, and then it'll snowball from there. But back then, the one thing Fury didn't have, we didn't have anything released. You know what I mean? So except for cassettes through fans and bootlegging and stuff like that. So we're just happy that now, guys like you could hear it and you could, take it apart, listen to it, have fun with it,
Yeah, absolutely. Like Angel, for example, I think Fury would do really well playing like a bill with our friends in Kickin' Valentina. I think that would be a really, really good pairing for them and stuff like that. That's if you're unfamiliar with them,
that would
they're
be a
out
kick-ass show.
And I think that'd
be great. When we do some shows, we're definitely gonna, want to play with some other acts, and that would be great. Especially in the tri-state area. We'll probably hit the tri-state area first because that's where we came from.
Yeah.
And then probably Orlando area. We'll be doing a show there. But we would definitely Fury, even back then we'd said we'd play with anyone, and there was a period where we almost had opening slots at major acts. Like major bands, but we kind of stopped because of the showmanship, and it was very competitive back then.
Yeah, and you're definitely right too about the different era and the changing of the times and what different machines run and stuff like that. Because you've got the metal stuff, you've got the hard rock stuff. We know the stuff that needs to get played and the stuff that people are definitely going to dig in, because obviously these bands are still playing arenas. But then you've also got bands for like the younger crowd, or just kind of what's getting pushed right now, where you've got honestly probably the top guy right now that's kind of in the area of like the rock catalog as far as playing arenas, honestly would probably be a guy like Machine Gun Kelly, who's got this kind of emo resurgence thing that he's been a part of and stuff like that. So he's it's kind of interesting depending on like what people are defining as rock currently.
Yeah, it's a very wide it's a very wide spectrum of what people consider rock or heavy metal, or it's kind of interesting when you think about it. Like someone like me, I like everybody from Elvis, Queen on up to Disturbed, Metallica. I like everybody. I like a lot of different bands. So I think people are finding some of these classic bands interesting, and the newer, and a lot of the newer bands are influenced by the bands of our era. So it's kind of cool. It comes full circle, but hopefully people can get exposed. It's all, at the end of the day, no matter what anyone says to you, it's about exposure. If you see a Papa John's commercial, right? If they run a commercial of a certain new pizza and they run it all the time, the stocks go up and people try the pizza. But if they don't run a commercial, people aren't going to go in and try something new if they don't see it. And that's what the big labels had in the 80s. They knew how to get that exposure for those bands. Like we played with Skid Row before they were famous, right? They were, great band. And we played a place called the Brook Theater. We headlined there about 6 times. And then what happened was Skid Row wasn't even known. And but Bon Jovi and Doc McGee already had the machine going, and they needed to play a show, like a send-off show, before MTV hit, before their album hit. And we did a double bill with them. It sold out in record time. We could have did probably 2 or 3 nights, like instantly. And but once they had that exposure, opening up for Bon Jovi, sold out arenas every night, and MTV, look what happened. So exposure is the key for success, sadly. But with the internet and guys like you and YouTube and stuff, some of these bands can break, and that's a good thing.
No, 100%. And I love that, Gene, because I'm a big Queen guy too. Bobby, I'm going to kick it down to you, but I'm going to dangle a worm on the hook in front of you because you missed this part, but you're going to love this. So the NYfury album that comes out next week that we've been talking about, the photos that were done for the album were done by your boy, Mark Weiss.
I know. And the great thing about
it was Danny Sanchez, who was Mark Weiss's right-hand man, who would set up the shots and the lighting for Cinderella's Night Songs or Kiss Crazy Nights, all those famous album covers. So, so to me, Mark is great, but Danny was the key. It's, he was the guy, the silent guy that, for us. And, I think he did a great job on our photos. I mean, they still hold up today. and they look great. That album cover is as good as any album cover from the 80s. He did a great job.
So, Gene, I got to ask, why didn't you guys break? What was the big thing that just held you guys back?
Well, what happened was when we first came out, NYfury started in 1980. A lot of people don't know that, and then the NYfury that everyone knows, that hit around end of 86 into 87, and then we had that run. We came out on fire. The first show we ever did was an auditorium, sold out 1,000 tickets. And then we went on to headline everywhere we played. We're the first band ever to headline L'Amour's, Club Benet, and Stone Pony on the first time playing there. Wow. Years ago, you had to have an album out, be famous, or play there for 6-7 months on a Wednesday night and work your way up. We were headlining theaters, and then we went as far as we could, and then we got a deal. So what happened was we had an independent deal with a man named Dan Giuliano, and it was about $500,000, which was a pretty good deal because Fury already was worth about $500,000 in terms of what we had, equipment and show, and the album covers ready and the photo sessions and all that stuff, the equipment and the promotions and stuff. That was all done by me. I networked that band to no end till I was broke. And then Dan came in, and it was after we played. We did a show with Skid Row, and then we went on to do an arena show in Puerto Rico. And then when we came back, he signed us, and we had all the contracts, everything ready to go. And then we had to do one show at the Stone Pony for the producers and everyone involved to pick the next songs that they wanted to do for the videos. We rented out. We were going to rent out the Ritz and film 2 MTV videos. We had everything ready to go. Sadly, that night, Dan passed away in a car accident after the show. And he was doing a label like Casablanca, what Neil Bogart did. Had the money, had the band. We were the band he wanted, and he was going to push us, and we were going to have a product out and everything. But sadly, he died, and that stonewalled us because at that point we couldn't go any higher than we did for an unsigned band. A lot of people thought we were signed already. When you go into a theater and play a theater and you pack it, everyone thinks you're signed already. And especially the show that we had, it was unheard of. I mean, even till today, if people have told me they've never seen a band like Fury unsigned. Now, signed bands, obviously, look at the stage shows they have today. But for back then, an unsigned band with a show, production, and performance level of that kind was unheard of. You know what I mean? Usually you had to be signed, and by your 3rd or 4th record, you had those type of shows. So we basically didn't continue because of finances. Sadly, that's what it really was. So in terms of making it, were we in magazines and newspapers constantly? Yes, more than any other band I've ever seen for an unsigned band. Did we play theaters and arenas? Yes.
I didn't know
so
about
we were on the radio
being
too.
From the Philly area, you didn't hit too much in this market, though.
Yeah, well, you could only go. There's only a certain amount of reach that you could do. You do selected shows here and there. We did as much as we could, and our production was so big, and it was so much funneling into it. It cost money. Basically, Fury was about money at that point. So it was it was sad how it wound up. I mean, when you're drawing 700 to 1,000 people or more at a show, and I was going to see signed bands. I don't want to name any bands, but I would go see them at Studio One in Jersey or something, and they had 200 people there. And then a night before we had like 800 or 900. So, what is fame and what is a deal? So basically we didn't get that MTV video and the big support of a major label. If we would have had that, Fury would have been huge. I mean, we would have crossed over everywhere. I personally think, and other people too.
Gene, so I grew up in the Philly area. So I, very close with the guys in Brittany and Heaven's Edge and Mark and all those guys. But, I got to say, you guys didn't break down here.
Well, Brittany Fox really didn't break down where we were either. You know what I'm saying? So they were only known until they had the MTV video. So, we went as far as we could in certain markets the way because we were self-run, self-contained. You know what I'm saying? So we did as far as we could. But look at the LA bands. Poison left Pennsylvania and they went to L.A. and they played the same clubs everyone else did, right? They didn't conquer PA or New York. They all those bands in L.A. They just made it from the Sunset Strip. They got deals and they made an MTV video like Fast the Pussycat. I mean, we could go on and on. One hit wonder type bands, right? So Fury, we went as far as we could go. You know what I mean? So I mean, like we could speculate what would have happened with this and that, but on the level that we were at, we had like really no management at that point. We were self-contained, so I mean, things could have been done a lot bigger and better if we would have had a little help. But the stuff that we did do was usually top notch. Gene,
I was kind of thinking. So when you had that tragedy of when it came to what kind of stopped you guys when you had the label that was with you, was it because of the show that you guys put on and just kind of the punch that you had? Is that what stopped you from getting picked up after that tragedy struck? Was it because people just kind of automatically assumed that you were signed?
Well, here's the thing. We were offered deals with major management at some points, and certain labels approached us, but they wanted all the publishing, and they also didn't have more. We put more money into what they would have put in.
Oh,
so you understand? So the type of show and the things that we were doing and the promotion that we were doing was, and the photo session and all that stuff that goes into it, the equipment, we had everything that a signed band would have except for that deal. Mm-hmm. So you know what I mean? So we really just had a little bad luck, and we were locked in with that contract until that had to be fizzled out of the way. There was a couple of lawsuits and things. It's hard to get all into it now,
for sure.
But Fury, there's so many bands that could have made it maybe, but they just didn't have the right chance to do it, or the luck,
Yeah, man, I definitely
like Quiet Riot. Let's look at Quiet Riot. Great band, right? They had the greatest guitar player that ever lived in my book. They couldn't make it, and they had Randy Rhoads in that band. But look what happened a few years later. They did a cover song. It became number one, first heavy metal album to go number one. They had a great video. They were playing the US Festival, and then everything just snowballs. Again, it's all about exposure to me, I think,
For sure. No, 100%. Psycho Steve, let's kick it down to you, my good dude. We've been talking a little bit about the album coming out next week, a little bit of the photography and everything Gene was talking about, like all the money that he put in to really work the networking, all the way up until the unfortunate situation with the death in the camp that kind of stonewalled everything. And we talked a little bit about his relationship with Ace Frehley, just to kind of brief you real quick.
Right on. So welcome to the show.
Hey, Steve. How you doing, buddy?
Great.
Me and Steve go way back.
Yeah, I've known Gene. I'm going to show my age, 35 years minimal. 40.
Yeah, when Steve was a little peckerhead, I knew that guy.
I'm just a taller peckerhead with no hair. There you guys have it.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, Steve's a great guy, everybody. He's a really great guy, and we had a lot of the same likes and stuff, so we got along really well. Absolutely. He's a big Eric Carr fan. I was a big Eric Carr fan too. He's a friend of mine, and Steve loved him as well. So we go way back.
Yeah. So Steve, if you're 35, how did you go to a Kiss show in 1980?
My father was very dear friends with Bill Coyne. So, and there's something called a DeLorean. Okay, so my question is, it has nothing to do with the New York story. It has to do with Gene and his beautiful wife, Dee. My first question is, who takes longer to get ready, you or her?
We're about the same. I think we toured together, so we were pretty fast at getting ready. She was one of the singers in Carnival of Souls.
Right.
A lot of people didn't know that she was the masked character. So Dee's the best when it comes to touring with and getting stuff done. She's almost like a manager, road manager, singer, all in one.
Nice.
Yeah, I couldn't do anything without her, to be honest. She keeps me going. She's the one that pushes me to keep writing and playing and stuff. So nice. I owe a lot to her. So
if you didn't do music, did you have any other aspirations to be anything else besides a musician?
When I was a little guy, I always wanted to play baseball, professional baseball, and I actually played when I was younger. And was pretty good at it. I made the all-star teams and stuff, but it was the rock and roll bug. When that hit, I always loved music, so writing songs, that kind of thing. But I went into other things, like I had stores, like you remember the collectible shops and stuff.
Yeah.
So I always was into entertainment of some kind, movies, music. And then I started doing conventions. I started doing that. You know what I mean? So I've done a lot of different things, but music has always been my main love. Songwriting has been my main thing that I really like doing more than anything.
Right. So for people don't know, since Gene and I have gone back for decades and everything, he was the first person to do conventions before the Kiss Expos and Chiller and things like that. And he would tie wrestling into it as well. He would have professional wrestlers when it was called WWF. I know, Angel, you don't know because you're a freaking young whippersnapper, but it's now called WWE. But then he would have wrestlers and professional musicians and, from all genres, not just rock and metal. And then he would also have a shit ton of VHS cassettes that he would have copies of shows that Kiss did or other bands. And he also did a lot of anime. And he also...
we used to import a lot of Japanese Godzilla stuff. We were kind of ahead of the game. I always found that people that like Star Wars and comic books usually like horror and Kiss.
Right,
and it kind of all goes together because we all like all those kind of things. I'm a big into superheroes, and I used to bring the cast of Batman there and the Green Hornet. I was friends with those guys, Adam West and Van Williams and Peter Criss and Ace. I would mix all these guests together, and people go, "Well, how do you do?" I just put guys in there that I like. So if we had someone from like the Undertaker from WWE or WWF, whatever you want to say, or Goldberg, and I put him next to Freddy Krueger, and then maybe Typo Negative. It was kind of cool mixing all these different genres together because I think they go hand in hand, personally.
And it was a lot of fun. And he wouldn't, like, a lot of these places, they would charge like $35 for a ticket. And then the artist or whoever you're meeting at Chiller would charge upwards of hundreds of dollars, while Gene would just charge you a very small fee, like $10 to get in. And then at that time, of course, the cost of living is a lot different now. But, the artist would only charge like, I don't know, $15, $20. And you could take a Polaroid picture with them, or, you get an 8x10 glossy signed by them. And he would do it at a place like the Meadowlands Hilton.
Yeah, it was actually the Meadowlands Convention Center. They weren't hotels. I went into the convention center type size in Somerset and stuff. They were pretty big shows. And, what we tried to do is we tried to make the fan experience the best it could possibly be. Where can you go meet, 15 to 20 different stars from all different genres and buy memorabilia and get to take a picture with them and get their autographs and stuff. We had Adam West in the Batmobile. Ace Frehley took the Batmobile. He even took it for a ride. We had so much fun with that crazy stuff, and the people remember it to this day. But now it's become too corporate. I can't compete with like Disney and all these. They're paying like guests like Sylvester Stallone, hundreds of thousands of dollars to appear. You can't compete with the corporate world. Comic-Con has really gotten so big, but it's millions of dollars behind it. When we were doing it, it was $10 to $15 to get in, and believe it or not, people back then complained, and I said, "You're not going to get this anywhere." You know what I mean? For $15, And but now people tell me, "Oh, we missed it those days. We wish you'd do them again."
And then also, besides NYfury, he had a great band called Carnival of Souls, not named after the Kiss album.
Yeah, it was the horror movie that actually influenced us.
So if you guys don't know, he had two great drummers in his band. He had Stet Howland, and he also had Bobby Rock for a bit. So can we talk a little bit about now NYfury is coming out with a new album? Is this like all new material or stuff that was in the vault or what?
Yeah, the NYfury album was stuff that was in the vault. Like I said earlier, I had written about 4 albums worth of material. And for me back then, what I wanted to do, I was thinking ahead of myself. I thought bands should already have at least 1 to 2 albums ready at all times, so you could release 2 albums in a year instead of waiting 4 years or like 10 years like Guns N' Roses, a crazy amount of time. So, we took this stuff out of the vault and we fixed it up, and we're just going with that right now. As far as Carnival Souls, that's another thing that I love too, which is a totally different animal. But I'm also putting together something now with that as well. So there's going to be kind of like a NYfury Carnival Souls type of thing, hybrid going on, which I think is going to be pretty cool. The fans are going to like.
Awesome. Jay?
Absolutely, for sure. So one of the things I definitely have to ask you about, because they're out of New York and you just mentioned them, and I'm a lunatic crazy person, is the band Typo Negative. And I'd love you to talk a little bit about just what relationship you had with those guys, the late great Peter Steele, or just anything in general from being a New York guy and being in that area, because I love that band so much, and I would love to hear a little bit about what relationship you may have had with them.
Yeah, Pete Steele was just he was one of the, to be honest, he was like one of the nicest guys I met in rock and roll. He had this big ominous look to him, and he's intimidating and stuff. But he was a teddy bear. He was a sweetheart, that guy. And he was really easy to work with. And he was really on it. Like when I first approached him, when we talked, I said, I'd like to bring you into this horror rock convention I'm doing. And he said, really? Like people are going to want to meet me and get my autograph. I go, dude, people love you. I go, you guys are great, and he was so humbled. He was just a really nice guy. And we brought him to the shows, and he had a great time. You know what I mean? People got to meet him and talk to him, and he was able to interact with his fans, and I think he liked that. And it's sad that he left us so soon, but he really was a great guy, and they always were, staple at L'Amour's, great band, and I always liked, the imagery, the dark, Carnival Souls definitely had some of that same kind of imagery if you ever seen it, so I really thought they were a great band. It's a shame. He was really a nice guy. Whenever you ran into him, sweet guy, just I don't know if you ever met him,
No.
He was really nice.
I would have loved to. I've met a few of the other guys. You may already be familiar, but just in case you're not, like Kenny and Johnny have a bitchin' band together that came out of the ashes of their Seventh Void band called Silver Tomb that they're doing now.
Right. Yeah, Johnny the drummer you're talking about, right?
Yeah, Johnny Kelly. And
yeah, John Kelly. We actually at one time approached him to play for Carnival of Souls.
Really?
Right. So what happened was Carnival Souls, we just got done headlining the Count Basie Theater, and we wound up getting a deal at the end of that show, the very next day, basically. And we were replacing the drummer, and we actually were replacing the singer as well. But I was able to get a deal, and we needed a drummer. So we needed someone really fast to cut the video, and John was one of the guys we were asking. But I had my eyes on my favorite drummer that I've ever seen live. He was one of my favorite, besides Eric Carr, he'd be my number one guy. But I went to go see Wasp play with Motorhead in the city. And I was already familiar with the drummer, Sted Howland. And I was at the bar, and Lemmy was actually at the bar standing next to us, and we were talking to him. But I said, see that drummer up there, D? That guy is an amazing drummer. I can see myself playing with him one day. And we didn't think nothing of it. And then years later, we approached Stet. We sent him a package of the songs. He loved it. And he says, oh, this is like a dream come true, this type of material to play. Because when Carnival Souls is very drum bass driven music. So he fit perfect in with the band. And then what happened, sadly, he was kind of locked in with Wasp. And every time we tried to book something, Blackie booked something. It was kind of it was kind of a little bit of a mess at one point. So we had to get another drummer. So the next guy that I thought might be able to handle it was Bobby Rock from Vinnie Vincent Invasion, who I was a friend with. Vinnie Vincent, I knew Slaughter and those guys. An ex-drummer of mine played with Brian, my ex-drummer Brian from the first Fury played with Mark Slaughter in Vegas. So we were all in that circle. So we approached Bobby Rock to come in.
Bobby played on my first two albums.
What'd you say?
Bobby played on my first two albums.
That's awesome. Yeah, he's a great drummer, Bobby. Yeah,
I love him to death.
If you go on YouTube and you watch our videos of We All Fall Down and Gray, Bobby learned the songs on the plane, and when he came down and we played live, and that's the first time we're playing together. Is in those videos.
Wow.
And I've never seen a band gel like that. Stet Howland and Bobby Rock are probably the two top rock drummers, up there for me. They're really good guys, great drummers. And it was an honor playing with those guys, and as you know, you played with Bobby, so you know what kind of talent he is too. And they're just great.
He and Neil Zaza did my first 2 albums.
Oh, that's awesome. I'd like to hear it. Maybe Steve could point me in the direction to check it out. Awesome.
That's killer, dude. And Gene, there's one other thing I wanted to ask you before I kick it back up to Angel and the fans. When I was, doing some research for the interview and just kind of looking up stuff and doing some various Googles on you, did I see that you spent time in the Rat camp in 1982? Did you play with Rat at that time?
Oh, you're talking about Rat with Stephen Pearcy?
Yeah.
The funny thing is, I get asked that every month by someone. Supposedly, there was a Gene Hunter that played with Rat.
On bass.
The bass, yeah, he played bass with Rat, right?
Yeah.
And that's not me, no.
No worries, it's all good. It just,
but hey, if you want to add to the story, if it moves some units, we'll go with it.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I just thought it was interesting because I was like the timing fit. I mean, I knew that you had already started NYfury before that, but I was like, I mean, the timing fits. I mean, I know that they're LA based, but between like the name, the spelling, and more importantly, the instrument, I'm like, well, it's not like I'm gonna have to ask him if one of the other guys doesn't.
Yeah, that always comes up because people in the past, people have, there was a period where I was away from music, and people would Google my name, Gene Hunter, and they would see that the name would come up attached to Rat. And they would go, "Oh man, Gene played with Rat," and I'm like, "No, that's not me," But if Steve Prescott wants to go with it, maybe he could do a press release on it, and we could milk it.
I'm going to reach out to Piercy and ask him.
Yeah,
yeah. Rat was another great band when they first came out. I thought they were great. Those guys.
Yeah.
I wish they would all get back together. With Warren. I wish those guys.
Real quick, your favorite bass.
Oh, my favorite bass player?
No, your favorite bass. Like the wood you hold in your hand.
Yeah, right now my favorite bass is a Schecter. I have a bunch of Schecters, but I also used to like the Fender Precision, but that was kind of heavy live. And I used to play Bass Collection and Pedulas. But I'm in the market for a new bass. I need to get a couple of new ones, if we're going to start doing more shows, because I like to have at least 3 or 4 basses, especially with down tuning sometimes. So I need like 4 basses, a backup for each. But Schecter has been my go-to bass. If you look at the Carnival of Souls videos, that's what I currently play. It's a badass bass. It's called the tribal bass. It sounds great. It plays great. It looks great.
Now, do you have a signature model? Did you ever do one?
No. Yeah, I don't have a signature model. I'd like to have one. In the past, I had endorsements with Gibson bass, and I would give out basses at shows. Like, I'd play the bass, and we'd have like a contest and give it out. So, maybe we'll contact them again, maybe to get something going. But yeah, I'd like to have that would be wonderful to have a bass like that. Like your own, model. Yeah. Maybe in the future.
Very cool.
Absolutely. Angel, let's kick it up to you, buddy.
We get to a question from Matt Porter from earlier. He wants to know, do you have any stories from playing... Sorry, let me get the question correct.
Move the hair out of your hands.
Very funny, Steve.
Trim your butt hairs.
Exactly.
This is what I got to deal with. But I love you guys. Do you have any good stories of the shows that you actually played, and who was the biggest pain in the butt to tour with?
Ooh, that's a good one.
You don't have to say the name.
This is coming from Matt Porter. I want to give a shout out to Matt Porter. He's a nice guy, that guy. I like him.
We love Matt. Look,
he's a good guy. So basically you're saying within the band?
Yeah. Well,
all bands are like, people always ask me, what is it like being in a heavy metal band? It's like having 5 girlfriends at once, and some of them are on their periods half the time. And I just don't, it doesn't work well with me. But I'm kind of like a workaholic, and I'm very professional. I like to get the stuff done. And there's always been a couple of guys in the band that maybe didn't pull their weight. and or some guys didn't have the capability to be as good in the studio as well as as someone like say Gary and myself or Mike. We're more seasoned live and in the studio. So there's always some guys that just don't hold up all around. Bands like Cinderella had the same problem. Great band, loved them, one of my favorites. But we were told back then, like the drummer, what was his name?
Fred Curry.
Fred Curry, great guy. Met him in California, but they didn't use him on the record because he couldn't. The timing thing was a problem, so they used Cozy Powell, from what I remember.
Yeah.
So we had issues like that with our band as well. You know what I mean? So but there's a lot of personalities in the band, and then the other thing too is some of the guys would have these girlfriends or groupies, whatever you want to call them, that would become problems as well. But that's in all bands. You know what I mean? So, but now we move forward and we have a different agenda now. We're more mature and stuff, and I don't like to tolerate any of that nonsense stuff. I want to play right and put on a show and not have all that baggage. But a lot of bands have baggage. Even the biggest bands. I could tell you stories about famous groups that I hung out with and the stuff that was going on behind the scenes and how they treated certain members. It was pretty bad. It's a hard industry, and you're dealing with all different personalities and egos,
Yeah,
So I don't know if that answers it.
Yep, I'm going to go deeper into Matt's question. His question was because he was doing expos, the rock, horror, wrestling conventions, who were the best and the worst guests to work with?
Okay, so the best guest to work with. Wow.
Didn't use it.
Okay, so I think the two best guys that I ever worked with would be Adam West and Van Williams. And if you don't know who Van Williams was, he was the Green Hornet who starred with Bruce Lee, the legend Bruce Lee. So as a child growing up, Bruce Lee was like a hero of mine, and I loved Van and Adam West. They were like, the granddaddies. But professional-wise, they were so polite, so on time. They signed everything. They were great. Another guy, Ace Frehley, at the conventions, he was flawless. He signed everything, and he talked to everybody, and he was great. Goldberg, the wrestler, he was great. I had a problem once with Goldberg and the Giant, which is a pretty funny story. They supposedly didn't like each other, and they both arrived at the back of the convention center, one on one side, one on the other side. And my security was busy. I was by myself, and Goldberg entered on one side, and the Giant, or Big Show, if you know who that is, was on the other side, and they both seen each other from across the convention center, and they started cursing at each other, and it got heated, and I had nobody there but myself. The limo drivers were outside. They started walking towards each other to fight. Now I'm getting, these are my guests at the show, and I'm like going, guys, like, I'm putting my hands up, and the Giant, I was like a 2-year-old next to that guy. He was so big, and I'm saying, like, guys, you got to chill out. This is for the fan, and they got right to each other's faces, and then they hugged each other, and I'm like sweating it in the middle, like, oh, they played a joke on me. So they were in character up to the point of being with each other. You know what I mean? So. But most of the guests I had were great. I'm trying to think if there was anyone that was really a problem. Burt Ward, the Robin character, as a fan, I met him years ago. Really, like early on, I met him and he was great. But when I started working with him, he was a little hard to deal with. So Burt Ward would probably get the Problem Child Award. You know what I mean? Dee Snider, he was great. He was a great guest. Peter Criss was great. He was a gentleman. Just a great guy. And this is before the reunion tour. And I remember sitting down having dinner with Peter and Ace and the cast of Batman. We're all talking. And I said, you're going to be putting that makeup on one day. And I go, it's going to be huge. He goes, no, you think so? I go, dude, you're going to sell out stadiums in minutes. He goes, oh, I don't think it'll be that big. I go, listen to me. I know. I go, the original Kiss back together, it'll happen. And then when it happened like a year or so later, they sold out Tiger Stadium in minutes, So it's weird. Like they actually had their doubts. They didn't think it was going to be as big as it was. That whole reunion thing, But yeah, guest wise, it was most of them were really great. Pete Steele was wonderful. He was great. We had guys like Bruce Kulick. I mean, the list goes on, and Wasp and all different bands. It was great. They were all very cordial and great.
as like a quick extension of Matt's question, Gene, did you ever have any members of like the Munsters or the Addams Family at your shows? Because I love those shows.
Yeah, I love those shows too. Yeah, I didn't get a chance to get those guys yet. We were working on at the time Linda Carter. No one ever had her. We had Linda Blair, The Exorcist. She was great. She's actually friends with my wife, and we would go see her on Broadway when she did some stuff. And Lou Ferrigno, the Hulk, guys like that. Frank Gorshin, the Riddler. He was great. We had so many different guests. Julie Newmar, Catwoman, another great guest. There's just so many over the years. But the Monsters, I would have loved to have had one of those guys there. Addams Family, I did like it. Watching it. But I didn't really have any contacts for anybody from that show.
Oh, gotcha,
we had
man.
Elvira. We were the first ones to have Elvira. And
that's awesome. That's super cool. Yeah, I frequent a convention in New Jersey called Monster Mania Con, and that's when I was able to meet Elvira there. So, as well as Lisa Loring, who was the original Wednesday Addams. So, I love that show. I love the Munsters, and I'm a really huge Addams Family person. So, I was just kind of curious if you had anybody from those camps.
Yeah, we didn't have any. I would have loved to. If we would have continued, we probably would have got them.
Absolutely, for sure. Right back up to you, Angel.
Who inspired you to pick up the bass, and what advice would you give to aspiring bass players?
Well, to be honest, the first person that I was introduced to would be Elvis. And Elvis was the first guy, and that got me. They had pictures of me, my family would be listening to him, dancing around with my, I had a guitar like his and a red guitar. And I thought he was the epitome. I still think he is the epitome of what a rock star would be. You know what I mean? The look, the movement, and then I went, obviously I got into the Beatles, and then I got hooked on Kiss. As soon as I seen Kiss and Queen, those guys early on really grabbed me. I did like Angel for a period. It's still a great band. I love Angel. But Kiss visually, because I was into comic books and superheroes and Star Wars, all that, Kiss was like perfect, perfect for that, attention span. So bass-wise, leading to playing bass, I would say Steve Harris is probably my favorite bass player. That, and Geezer Butler. Those guys, really, made me want to play bass. But I also play guitar too. A lot of people don't know I play guitar on most of the album, and bass. And I write all the songs on guitar. I even write the drum parts. And so I'm kind of into all the instruments. But bass and guitar. It would probably be Elvis would be the first introduction, and then Ace Frehley, and then Randy Rhoads would be the top of my list. I think Randy Rhoads was the greatest. He's a big influence on my writing, and in terms of metal writing, I thought he was the best. And Steve Harris, Iron Maiden, I don't think you get any better than that. He's a pretty cool dude, great songwriter, and Iron Maiden is one of the best bands ever to me.
Agreed.
Yeah.
And they still hold it up today. I think they're the last of the Mohegans, compared to what's out there now. Iron Maiden can still hold their own on that stage, and they still put on a great show. And they're great guys. I got to meet them too when I was younger. Nice. A little story fast if we have time. I was at Lemore's one night on a Wednesday night. I think the band that was playing there was called TT Quick.
Yes.
And I just left practice. I had my jacket on. It had Iron Maiden on the back of it. We, all my friends just wanted to go get a beer and watch a band. There was nobody there. And I'm standing at the bar, and I see this guy with blonde hair looking at me. And I'm like, and I was an Iron Maiden fan already, and I wasn't expecting to see them there. And he looks at me, Dave Murray, and he comes up to me. I didn't know it was Dave Murray at first. And he goes, "You know who you remind me of?" He goes, "You remind me of the drummer in Kiss." And I go, and he had the English accent. I go, "Are you Dave Murray?" And he goes, "Yeah, I'm Dave Murray." I go, "I'm a big fan. I can't believe you're here." And he goes, "Oh, I'm here with the whole band." And I turned around. It was Steve Harris and Nico. It was amazing.
Yeah,
and they were there that night. And we got to hang out with them. And this is at their high point. Like they were starting to break really big. You know what I mean? And Dave Murray, I met him years later again. And every time I met him, he bought me a drink. He was just so nice. Just a great guy. You know what I mean? He's one of the nicest guys I think I've met too. But, they were my heroes. And here I am, hanging out with Iron Maiden.
Is that with Bruce fronting the band?
Yeah, Bruce wasn't there. Bruce was there, but he wasn't with them that night. But I did see Iron Maiden's first show in New York. They opened up for Judas Priest, and Paul Di'Anno was the singer. another phenomenal singer.
Yeah.
They were amazing, Iron Maiden. And Judas Priest was amazing, and Iron Maiden together. Those are some of the best shows I've ever seen when they played together. So they were great. And Paul Di'Anno, I love Bruce, and I also like Paul. I think the best albums are Killers and Number of the Beast. So out of all their records, I think those are the two best, and two different singers. Paul Di'Anno was more punky and had more of a mid-range.
Yeah.
And then Bruce had the powerful metal vocals, and I like both. People always ask me, who do you like better? I like them both.
Well, then let's jump in real quick and extend on that. What did you think of Blaze's tenure?
Oh, yeah, that was like you're talking about the '90s era, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, when they were playing Birch Hill, I was like going, "What's going on?" I think they played Birch Hill, but yeah, I really didn't like it.
Was running.
Yeah, the songwriting wasn't as good. I really wasn't hooked at that on that period. You know what I mean? So I'm kind of like the original, Iron Maiden, up to the Number of the Beast album and Killers are probably my two favorite. And then, I'm into Peace of Mind, the other stuff, but yeah, I didn't really dig that other stuff later on.
I got you, brother, for sure. Right back up to you, Angel.
What advice would you give to aspiring bass players as far as practice, equipment, that sort of thing?
Okay, so in terms of heavy metal, hard rock music,
yep,
definitely practice and try to play as many originals as you can, so you can find your own style. A lot of people out there play covers, and they play covers all the time, and they wound up playing like those other bands, and they become almost like parrots of those bands. I recommend writing, playing, and in terms of equipment, Ampeg amps are the best for bass, especially for metal. You know what I mean? So I would say, go that route, but be true to yourself and play what you want to play. You know what I mean? Don't force play your own style, and just do what you want to do. Never give up and believe in yourself.
Okay. And just this fan question from Tony and it's just something that we had discussed earlier. Do you think that's what's missing from so many bands today, is that it's harder to approach them, really, as it was back in the day?
Yes, I grew up in the heyday of this era, right? And back then you were able to go up to the bands, and back then bands would never even charge you for an autograph. You know what I mean? Someone like John Lennon, right? He would never believe in charging for an autograph. He didn't even want his songs in a commercial. Now the whole world's changed. Everything is about money and corporations and charging like thousands for autographed guitars and $1,500 to $5,000 to meet people. I mean, someone told me Metallica's charging $5,000 to $7,000. I mean, that's like the taxes you pay for your house for a year. So I think it's kind of there's a certain cutoff point. I personally I wouldn't want to charge anyone to meet me. You know what I mean? If they're going to support the band and get some merch and stuff, I would sign it for free. You know what I mean? So that's me personally. But yeah, bands were more approachable back then. Same thing with baseball players. I was a big Yankee fan. I would go see the Yankees play, and I'd wait after the games as a little kid, and I would meet Thurman Munson and Bobby Mercer and Reggie Jackson. They would come up and talk to me. Now it's so corporate, you can't meet guys like that or get their autograph. They want to sell them. It's all big money. It kind of ruins it in a way, I think, personally.
I mean, a lot of musicians have also spoken out where they're like, look, we just can't sign a bunch of things on the streets anymore because we know it's just going to go up online. It's such a bummer.
Yeah, that's the other drawback. That's a good point too. Like Ringo Starr, years ago, he made an announcement he's going to stop signing because he's been signing his whole life. Now, picture being someone like Ringo Starr, and you're walking down the street. Everyone's going to, if you add up the time that he's on Earth, half of it was signing autographs. He's got to be stopped every second. So I guess there is a cutoff point where you don't want to sign. Plus, people sell the stuff. That happened. I lived at down the block from the hospital that George Harrison was being kept before he passed away, and someone had him sign. He was like, the poor guy's almost on his deathbed, and they made him sign guitars.
Oh my God!
The lawyers found out, and they almost shut that whole hospital down You know what I mean? They got the guitars back, and I mean, there is a cutoff point where where people are selling the stuff and getting all this money, just raping everybody is wrong. And then you have these autograph seekers on the streets, and I met Al Pacino a couple of years ago, and I was talking with him, and all the guys there were getting autographs to resell. But I just wanted to talk to Al Pacino, and he knew a family friend of ours. So that's what I wanted to talk. My favorite actor, and Dee and I met him, and we wanted to just talk about that. And he was so cool. He stopped signing autographs and he just talked to us. But everybody else was there. It was just 10, 15 items, and they were just doing it to sell on eBay.
Yeah.
So I think that does ruin it too. But but majority of bands, if the fans at a show and they want an autograph, I think the people should just sign it. If they buy a piece of merch to help the band, that's great.
Yeah. I mean, hey, dude, Gene, I'm a bass guy. I'm a bass player myself. And I mean, if you end up doing that thing again where you got like guitars that you're signing and donating for NYfury, I'd love to put one of those in my house.
Hey, we're actually doing a contest now with one of our Epiphone guitars. It's the same color of the album cover. It's a contest that because the pre-orders did so well, we wanted to give back to the fans. So anyone has bought the CD, anyone that's bought the bundle, we have a bundle right now with vinyl, colored vinyl, CD, posters, guitar picks, you name it. It's a whole bundle. You can find it on the Ionian Record site. You get 3 entries into the prize to win the guitar, and then drum heads and autograph picks is second. We have a whole bunch of prizes to give out to the fans that have bought it or anyone that buys it, and it's over March 1st. You can find out the information at NYfurymusic.com.
Sweet.
And so we do stuff like that. I've done that in the past where I've given away basses free at the show just with the ticket stub.
Yeah.
We just called it. We just have a lottery, and a kid or a girl, someone wins the bass. So I like to give back to the fans. I've always done that.
Yeah, man, that's super rad for sure. Steve, let's kick it to you real quick, bud.
Where the fuck's my bass then?
You don't even play an instrument.
Inside voice.
Yeah, Steve, you play an instrument.
Steve plays an instrument. He's excellent at the male organ. He's excellent. That's what I heard.
Yeah, the tuna fish harmonica been there. Thank you.
Rusty trombone.
Yeah.
You should at least play the cowbell.
True. I have rhythm. Glockenspiel.
1, 2, 1, 2.
Thank you.
You could do that right.
Right,
The cowbell.
We're getting
All
involved.
right,
I'm not cutting my hair.
The great thing about Steve is you could drop him anywhere. You could put him with the president or the king of Saudi or Kiss. Whatever circle he's in, Steve will adapt. He's he's the rock and roll chameleon.
Yes.
So I think that's what we should call Steve right now, the rock and roll chameleon.
I like
He could
that.
be in any circle and adapt.
I don't think you will change from Psycho Steve to Rock and Roll
No,
Chameleon.
but I can be Psycho Steve, a.k.a. the rock.
Yeah, AKA the rock and roll chameleon.
There
You
go.
better you better copyright that.
Damn straight, because Ted Poley came up with a name for me because of the beard and the schnoz. He called me the rock and roll rabbi. You remember? But I'm digging
The rock and roll rabbi.
Yeah,
That sounds like a TV show. We should look into that, Steve.
absolutely. We'll talk. Your people will call my people. There we go.
That would be a good way to get us on TV.
Yeah. All right. So NYfury, how did the name come about?
Well, the funny thing about NYfury is, do you guys remember the movie The Warriors?
Of course.
Yes.
But that's one of my favorite movies of all time. It's up there like in the top 10. There was a baseball gang called the Furies, and they were from New York. And they were influenced by, when they designed the gangs, they were heavily influenced by Kiss. That's what the director and the people that were doing the costuming and stuff, that's why they had the long black hair, the makeup. But to me, they were the coolest gang. So I always remembered that. And then, the Fury part was, where I wanted to do it. But the New York part, that was because of copyrights, believe it or not, originally.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean? So the trademarks, sorry. So when Fury was out, I knew that there could be another Fury in Tokyo or Kansas or something, right? So I said, you know what? I'm going to put the NY in front of Fury, so no one else is going to call themselves NYfury in Texas. So that'll give us that safe room. And then it just stuck as a gimmick. Our stage show and everything that we did was, had the New York theme. We used to open up with a New York from Sinatra or New York Groove before we hit the stage. It just became a thing, that the buildings and and being from New York, it became like a gimmick of its own. But it was basically a trademark thing.
Nice.
You know what I mean? To protect the name until everything was legalized. You know,
Sweet.
because the original band was Fury, and then New York was added to it.
Awesome. So another question is there any band besides, of course, Kiss and Iron Maiden that you would always had aspirations to be direct support for?
Oh, you mean to open up for?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, the interesting thing is, I always thought like Motley Crue would have been a good fit for us to open up for, or to play with,
Right.
and I mean, I would, Judas Priest would be cool. I mean, there's so many great bands I would have loved to have shared the stage with,
Right.
Yeah, I would say Judas Priest. He said Iron Maiden already, so yeah, I would say it would be Liberace probably first, then Judas Priest and Motley Crue. That would be probably a good bill.
He would love that.
Steve is a big Liberace fan. I don't know if you guys know that.
Yes.
I can see that.
I'm on the way
Me too.
home. He tickled my ivories, So
Yeah.
So that's where your wardrobe comes from.
Exactly.
Yes.
The glittery Jimmy shoes and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Gene knew me too. So
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. We Fury liked that black and silver thing that was going on. We were influenced that, and we had to be on. When we started doing the staging and the look of the band, we kind of went for what we weren't seeing. And our favorite period as an influence in terms of show and look was Kiss Alive 2. That black and silver look and that big stage show.
Yeah.
So we don't play like Kiss at all. We don't write songs like Strutter and Dr. Love and stuff. But in terms of the visual aspect, that Alive 2 era is probably the most visual appealing band to me. Still to this day, when you open up Alive 2, and I go, that's what's missing today. And the bands at the time, like Quiet Riot, Cinderella, and everyone else, they were more going in a different direction. But we kind of liked what Angel and Kiss did visually in terms of stage production and look. So that's where we got. People always ask, well, how did you pick that look? Or we just gravitated towards what we weren't seeing anymore.
For sure.
that was my first Kiss album.
Alive 2?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, my mom didn't want to buy it for me. When I remember we were in a record store and she goes, "I'm not buying that sick shit." When she seen Gene Simmons with the blood on his face.
Yeah, my dad. That's why my dad's like, no. I'm like, yeah. And then I heard "Any Way You Want It," and that's what got me hooked.
Nice.
Yeah. The
So-
Live 2 album's great.
Yeah.
So I got a question about buying the records before Tipper Gore fucked up everything and needed to have us get parents' permission. Did you guys have to do that? Was there anything like that?
Yeah, that didn't happen to us. Only I remember doing like radio interviews back then, and they would tell us we couldn't say this, like you couldn't say, "Oh yeah, we kick ass," or anything like that. I was on a radio station back then. I forgot what station it was, and I said, we just want to go up there and kick ass. And then the head of the radio guy is like yelling at us on the commercial break, "You can't say that up here." And now today people just do and say almost anything.
Right.
But back then, yeah, that whole the typical, when they had Dee Snider, right? They were looking at all these album covers, and they were making like the heavy metal bands the guinea pigs, right?
Mm.
So that happened even in the comic book industry. They try to censor comic books. I don't know if you guys know the history of that. So it's happened before.
What was that, Jay?
I said, I think I remember hearing about that.
Yes.
Yeah, so they started making comic books more kid friendly, because if you go back to the 40s and 50s and look at the covers, there's like murder scenes or women scantily dressed and stuff, and then comics started having their own kind of thing going on, and then they started cracking down on it. So they were censoring everything. So when you get to the heavy metal part, someone like a Dee Snider was probably frightening to them, or Blackie Lawless, right, with the chainsaw and all that stuff. So they used they went after those guys big time.
For sure. I feel like there was also a certain amount of like, awesome that actually kind of came with that, because I feel like it's going to draw a young crowd in and be like, oh wait, I'm being told by this person that I shouldn't listen to this album because it would be explicit. Well, shit, that's now the record that I want to go after.
Yeah, it actually backfired, I think, on them when they did that. People gravitate towards the unknown or something if it's bad. Like, it's like the same way someone goes to see a horror film, right? When you go on a roller coaster, you're going for the thrill. You're going, and that's what heavy metal I think had. It had that thrill factor. So I think kids didn't really listen to it, when they tried to do it.
Yeah, well, I used to just buy a couple albums surely just because of the album cover, because of the art. Like Ken Kelly was incredible, like Destroyer and Love Gun, and he did some Man of War shit, and then I bought Maiden before I even knew who they were. I just simply bought it for the art because I was just like, this is badass looking. What's this? Slayer, Rain and Blood, or freaking, seriously, it was just freaking cool as hell.
Yeah. Speaking of albums, that was like one of the appeals was the album cover was the grab, that would grab your attention. So I remember the first time I seen the first Iron Maiden record, I picked it up and I was like, this is cool. Like, what is this? You know what I mean? And the same thing with like, say, Kiss Destroyer. I mean, it's like a really cool cover, Right. And yeah. So to me, that was like it was part of the marketing, Then when it went to CD, you kind of lost that impact because you didn't have that big artwork.
Right.
But they were targeting those bands at the time, and censoring them or trying to censor them, But look what the stuff that goes on in rap music. I mean, some of the lyrics are crazy.
Yeah,
shooting people and all these other. So it's a changed world.
Yeah,
they got censored too because of Two Live Crew with their explicit lyrics and their content of their album cover. Excuse me, and they got fined and everything like that. I just want to say fuck the FCC. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, there's always some kind of a censorship of some kind, I guess, that goes on. Not everyone's going to like what you're doing.
Right.
And that's fine. If they like us or they don't like, I really don't care. I like what I like, and that's it. I don't want anyone telling me I can't listen to this or I can't read that.
Yeah.
Right. Well, this is, love me, hate me, you're still talking about me.
Yeah.
Hi, ex-wife. Jay, Angel.
Absolutely. No, for sure. Let's kick it back up to Angel and see if we got any more questions from the fans. But also, fans, hit us with that rapid fire. You guys know what that means because it is last call for alcohol when it comes to fan questions and comments. We always want to respect our guest's time, and Gene is, of course, no exception because we appreciate him spending his evening with us. But it is last call for alcohol, guys. Final questions and comments. This is the time to get them in. We've got Gene for a little more spin around the table, but we just don't want to take up too much of his evening. So, Angel, let's kick it right into you, buddy.
If you could put together a tour package, what bands would you like to go out on the road with next year?
Oh, that's a tough one. I mean, if we had like a dream package,
yep.
A band like Fury, I definitely would like to, Motley Crue would definitely be like Crew and Crew and Def Leppard are going on the road. I think NYfury would be great doing something with those guys. Skid Row would be great because we come from that same area again, and that would be cool to revisit something like that. It would be great to play in front of any of those bands. Kiss would be great, right? And we actually won a contest once to open up for Kiss. It was Guitar Center. That was my other band, Carnival Souls. We won a world. It was a countrywide contest that Eventful put on and Guitar Center.
Wow.
We won by I think 20,000 votes. But there was a clause in the contract. After we won, it was they were allowed to pick another band, and Lady Gaga had some influence. She dated one of the guys, and but it was based on our video performance. So the votes came in from around the country. What band would be the best band to open up for Kiss? And we had two videos, Gray and We All Fall Down. And, Kiss was able to veto it after seeing it. So Guitar Center was kind of upset because, they asked for our driver's license. We won the contest. They called us up and said, hey, you guys won the contest. You were hands down the best band to win this. And we loved your songs and videos. And like 2 weeks later, Kiss, they seen the videos and they didn't allow us to open up. So they took a band that was doing covers in the city. It was, a really crappy band. But Lady Gaga was dating one of the guys, and Lady Gaga was big at the time, and she was hanging out with Kiss at the time. So it was a big PR thing, but it was political. You know what I mean? But we won the contest, so we were happy with it.
And the trivia question: who was in that band?
And the band at the time was Bobby Rock, I think, was in the band,
Right.
and Lee Kinsella and Rob DeForge. We called them the Machine. Dee, my wife, and myself.
Exactly. And I saw you guys at the Staten Island Community College.
Oh, right. We played there multiple times.
Yes.
Yeah, those were some good shows.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And who was in Lady Gaga's band? Tommy London, everybody. Just saying.
Yeah.
So.
All right. Angel? I just want to know, where the fuck is Bobby? Did he pass out again?
You're muted again, Angel.
No, just a interesting comment from Brian. Parental advisory albums sold albums.
Sure.
Yeah. I mean, when
did.
someone's telling you don't listen to this record because it has cuss words or sexual lyrics, you're gonna buy it anyway. The only thing that sucks is going to the counter and having to have mom say it's okay for me to get the Guns N' Roses Use Your Illusion album.
That's a great album.
Yeah. And
I
I
think the
just
first 4 albums were great. But whatever.
all they have is 4 albums.
No, they had more than that.
Guns N' Roses.
Yeah, think about it. They had Appetite for Destruction, Lies, Use Your Illusion 1 and 2,
All right.
Chinese Democracy, and I'm missing one, I believe. Am I missing one? Or is that it?
Well, I was counting just studio albums.
Oh, wasn't Chinese Democracy a studio
Yeah,
album?
yeah. Studio, Illusions, and Appetite are the main studios.
And then
But I
Lies,
still... Is that considered a studio?
I don't know, because there is some songs that are studio. They're not all.
Right.
It's like a Kiss Alive 2, too. Think about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, Guns N' Roses. That was another odd band, right? When it took a while for that first album to break.
Yeah.
And I remember they played L'Amour's, and I remember it wasn't even. I don't remember even being sold out of Packed. It was and they weren't breaking. The album wasn't doing well, but I think it was David Geffen. I think they were on Geffen Records, right? If I'm correct.
Yeah, they were.
Yeah.
He begged and pleaded MTV to play their video, and when they finally played it, "Welcome to the Jungle," which is a great song, it had such instant exposure that they just skyrocketed. But if they never got that MTV video, I don't think Guns N' Roses would be here today. That exposure really helped bring them into the homes, and they were coming out at the right time. They were grittier than all the other bands, and the song was badass, and it just took off.
That exposure. Sorry, Steve. That exposure definitely does help. Like, for example, Gene, I'm a huge Danzig fan, and Danzig's main song that a lot of people know, of course, is "Mother." But the funny thing is, they had released "Mother," the original video, with the original album, and it just kind of did its thing. Then they released a live version of it called "Mother '93" about 5 years later, which blew the hell up on MTV, and that's what kind of brought back the whole resurgence thing with Danzig, which is funny because that happened actually towards the end of the original lineup breaking up.
Right. That's true. That's a very good point. Because I remember when that happened, I was going, "This song's an older song, and it's blowing up. It's blowing up now." And that that's if Fury's lucky enough, if it does catch on to more marketplaces, because we're doing really well in Florida and Orlando on 107. I got to thank Wayne Benson. He runs that station. They're just great. They play a good variety of all different metal and rock stuff that you can't hear elsewhere. But they go to 100 different countries. So we're getting requests from all over. They're hearing Fury for the first time and they're liking it. So, the exposure thing with Danzig or Guns N' Roses, it would be a different ball game if they didn't have that push. And that's the difference between, people always go, "How did NYfury not make it?" Everyone thought, "Oh, you were the next big thing." We could have been maybe one of the next big bands if we would have had that exposure. And that's the key thing with anything in this world. It's about exposure.
100%. Our guy Brian actually just commented. He's like, dude, I was literally just thinking the same thing off the Thrall Demon Sweat Live record. That was the Danzig album that put out Mother 93. So that's really, really funny. Right to you, Steve.
So it's really crazy because terrestrial radio played Mother 93 on like a classic rock station up in New York, and they aren't even classic rock. I'm like, what the fuck's going on here? But a mind-blowing thing would surprise all of you. I'm sure you all know this. Paul Stanley was asked to produce Appetite for Destruction. I don't know if you guys knew that.
I didn't know that.
I don't know if he was asked or from what I heard, Slash and Axl really didn't like him.
Right. And
I mean personally, Paul's a talented guy, right?
Right.
But I think he would have ruined the album personally.
100%, yes.
You know what I mean? I think that, they were doing something like a little Aerosmith like and a little gritty, and it was just at the right time. Paul Stanley, I don't think he had the right fit for that. And they still hate each other today. From what I see on these interviews, is constant like knocking down of each other. It's pretty funny.
Right.
Right. But they both made their mark, right, in rock and roll history. And I've met Slash many times, and obviously Paul. You know what I mean? The two guys doing their own thing.
Absolutely. Damn Jews. All right. All right. The question. My last question is: this album comes out next week. We expect, hopefully, some shows to hit.
Yeah, we're looking at the late spring.
Okay.
To do shows. So you know what I mean. So we're definitely gonna hit the tri-state area first, and then maybe we might do a warm-up show in Florida first, and then hit the tri-state. We're in negotiations now. I'm talking with the guys, and we're talking with a company to design a stage show. To put something together for us. So we want to try and give people a little bit of a show, and I think it could be fun, and maybe we could do some. Steve and I talked about maybe doing some double bills with some maybe another '80s band of, we might talk, maybe do some shows like that, and then some shows with us just headlining with a bunch of other bands. So definitely probably late spring. So the album comes out December 30th, and it'll be available everywhere, on all platforms, and you'll be able to buy it online. You can go to Eonian Records or NYfurymusic.com, and all the links will be there to pick it up. We have a new video premiere coming out December 30th for a new single that's being played now on the radio, "Fighting for Your Love," one of my favorite tunes. And we have a lot of great ideas and things coming. And this is only the beginning. We're in talks now to do another album. You know what I mean? So we're kind of excited about that. So this is just the beginning, because we have a lot of great material, and now we're going to drive it home, I think. And there's a big marketplace out there that's interested in this. So we're going to try and put it out there.
Awesome. Yay!
So hopefully people still want to, see a loud rock and roll band with a show. So
I do. Hell yeah, I do.
You know what I mean? So that's what I like, So I hate going to a show and walking out bored.
No.
I like hit me hard and leave me wanting more.
That is true.
Absolutely, definitely.
Remember grunge.
Let's kick it back up to you, Angel. Let's clear the board, bud.
Okay.
Did we lose Angel?
No,
oh, no, he's here.
I'm just laughing about grunge. That's all. Long story. A song that you feel NYfury should cover.
That's interesting. Let me see. Wow. I don't know. It's years ago we once in a while we did a show on the USS Intrepid. I don't know if you guys know that, the aircraft carrier.
Yeah.
We were the first heavy metal band to take over that ship. 6-7 years later, Kiss did it. And then 14 years later, Twisted Sister did it when they announced, both of them, their reunion tours. But we were the first band to play on that ship, a metal band. And we played a show, and the sailors, the military, they went crazy for us. But for an encore, we came out and did "I Don't Know" by Ozzy.
Oh, cool.
and we leveled the place. So that would be a cool one to do over. So, maybe something like that, or an obscure Black Sabbath song. I mean, the first Fury, when I was a kid, when I started, when we were 14, we were playing bars. We had to have chaperones with us, but we would open up with Symptoms of the Universe by Sabbath, and we go into Cheap Trick and Van Halen and Zeppelin, Jethro Tull. So I was doing that at 14 and 15 with the first Fury. So yeah, we there's a lot of great songs out there that we could do over again. I remember Maiden doing a Jethro Tull song. It sounded great. So yeah, maybe pick a Sabbath song or something, or a Van Halen song, and take it up a notch.
I always thought it was really cool that you played the Intrepid, because I had also heard a story once that when Cher did the music video for If You Could Turn Back Time, apparently after that video came out, like the U.S. like Navy or whatever was apparently like fucking pissed at the way that the video came out, like the way it was portrayed or something, and stopped letting bands perform on like their ships.
Yeah, I heard something about that. The funny thing is, when we did it, we couldn't bring our stage show, so they said, "Oh, what do you guys want to do?" And I said, "You got a big flag? Let's hang that big United States flag." It's almost like what Kid Rock did many years later. He hung the flag behind him, and we did the show with a giant flag, a wall of amps, and just us. And they went crazy. These guys were out at sea for like 6 months or something, and this is their first night in New York City. They're given these tickets for beer, right? That was a big thing. They only had a certain amount of tickets. And after the show, these great guys were all giving me their tickets. They were giving me their beer, basically. And, and you had to take it because it would be an insult. And I'm not really a drinker, but I took the beer and I drank with those guys. And they were the wildest crowd I think we ever played. They were so hungry for metal. And at one part of the show, I took off a sailor's cap and I put it on top of my head. And then years later, Cher did it in her video, Turn Back Time, because she had the big curly hair like me, and she took the same hat and put it on her head. And the band used to joke, "You did that before Cher," It's so funny, but it was wild. All these guys on an aircraft carrier. It's so amazing just being on one of those things, and it was great. I wish we would have had it filmed.
And
it would have been great to release. We have photos of it, but inside the CD, there's some photos I think of it.
Nice.
And a little secret about Gene, not just having Cher's hair, he also has the same tattoo on his ass that Cher does. Don't tell him.
I don't know about that, Steve. So,
just saying. All right, anyway.
Are you the one that put it there, Steve?
Of course, bro. With love.
the rock and roll chameleon.
Exactly, 100%.
I changed my name.
Nice. Right back up to Angel.
Right back to you, Jay.
Back to the board's good.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, Gene, we can't thank you enough, man, for spending some time out of your evening. We really appreciate you taking the time.
No, I appreciate you guys putting up with me, and you guys have been great. Thank you for the support, and thank you for the opportunity to talk about NYfury and the other projects that we're working on. And I want to just give a shout out to my bandmates, especially Gary Ryan. He's really came through. He's like my soulmate when it comes to songwriting and performing. In the studio, he's just an amazing guy. He gets the art of the song. You know what I mean? And I want to thank. He's a great vocalist. And thank Mike. He did some amazing guitar work, and the rest of the guys in the band. This is for everybody that was involved with Fury, the fans, the road crew. We had a great road crew. And all the people that supported us back then and going forward, all our new fans out there. I want to thank my family, my sister Tony Ann, a few other people, Connie Plummer, she's a big fan supporting us. There's so many, it's hard to, Brian Rademacher from Rock Eyes, he's a great dude, him and Mark Baylog, and Wayne Benson from 107, and all you guys. Steve, you've been with me for a long time. I thank you for the love and support, and
always.
We're glad that in 2022 that we could actually put out a really cool sounding record, and people get a taste of what NYfury would have had out back then. And we're going to do more too. We're going to take this to the next level.
Absolutely, man, 100%. And one more time, run the gamut on where yourself and NYfury can be found and where the record can be found.
Yeah, it's NYfurymusic.com, and that's our website. And from there, you can get to Ionian Records, the guitar contest at 107, the radio that's playing us, and other stations too. You'll be able to get everything from that website. So NewYorkFuryMusic.com. And I'm on Facebook too. I interact with people on there as well, like Steve. And you could reach us, in those places.
Awesome. That's so super rad. And again, thanks so much, Gene. We appreciate it so much, man. Thank you again.
No, you're welcome. Thanks, guys. Take care, buddy.
Take
Feel
care.
better.
Absolutely. Metal Summoners, and we can't thank you guys enough for spending your evening again with us and showing support to the scene, showing support to Gene and everything. So we will see you guys next week. We are super duper stoked. We've got a double dose coming out for you when it comes to next week's episode, but you don't get to find out about that till the end of this week, as always, while we make sure that everything is super good and peachy when it comes to that. So the guest announcement will be later this week, as always, and we will be live with you guys next week, as always. Make sure that you're following the boys on all of their social medias, on the Real Psycho Steve on Instagram, as well as Psycho Steve on Facebook, Angel Alamo on both Twitter and Instagram, myself on Facebook at Salem J, or on Instagram, which I do most of my interacting at just ARNR Junkie. So follow me, interact with me, talk to me. And of course, you can catch Bobby on both Instagram as well as BobbyDreyer.com. But again, we want to thank Gene Hunter for joining us, and the New York Fury camp for being so cool to let us rock out with them tonight. So on behalf of the Island Misfit Toys, on behalf of Angel, Steve, and Bobby, we thank you guys. Guest announcement at the end of the week. Dime says hi. He's spreading the love, and we will see you guys in a week.
Look at the look on Steve's face.
Episode of the Metal Summit. So kisses for all and kisses for you guys. We'll see you guys in a week. Take care, love each other, and have yourselves an amazing holidays, a great Christmas, a great Hanukkah, a crazy Kwanzaa. Whatever you guys celebrate, we're all for it. We'll see you guys in a week, and we love you. As always, you've been watching the Metal Summit.
Yeah.